Good evening, folks. I know I've been really bad about getting in front of my camera early on in the evening or earlier in the day at the very least. But I wanted to have an opportunity to sit down and discuss Brendan Dassey's case because I think he's getting kind of lost in the shuffle. And the fact is that every bit of evidence that's used in his case is used first in the Stephen Avery case, and it's really fucking stupid. But I wanted to start going through this because I think it's really vital to see how they railroaded this young man. So, with that in mind, I've started going through Kratz's opening statement, and Jesus Christ, folks. Okay, so this is the first page of Kratz's opening statement. And you know what really fucking sucks about this, folks, is he doesn't actually start talking about the case until here. Right there. At the bottom of the first page. Look how dense this shit is. Now, really quick, something that you guys should know if you're going to be studying, cases like this, just, for recreation or to keep yourself informed, something that you should know is that when anybody starts talking and they, whoa, I got like a Jessica Rabbit thing going on over here. It'd be nice if I had the figure. Is they will use stallers in their speech. They'll say, well, and if you read through this, it is so difficult to read because Kratz, at least 3 times in a sentence, uses or and stop it. So let's get down to brass tacks. Let's start right here where he actually starts talking about the fucking case. He says, you're going to learn in this case that several hundred law enforcement officers were involved. Funny, because in the Stephen Avery case, you said only 100 were involved. Which is it, Kratz? In fact, you're probably going to learn that this was one of the largest, if not the largest, at least by resources, investigation, criminal investigation, homicide investigation in Wisconsin history. Really, Kratz? You really, you couldn't just say investigation or homicide investigation. No, you had to go through the fucking thesaurus and find as much bullshit as you could. And because of the scope of this case, because of the size of this case, because a lot of the members of the jury are too fucking stupid to understand what the term scope means in context, it required investigators to coordinate or to make sure that everything was done not only properly, but leadership and direction was certainly required in this case. Now, this is significant because if you notice during the first half of that statement, he didn't use any of those stallers. It was only when he started talking about how on the up and up this investigation was that he started tripping over himself and having to stall. Telling, don't you think? He then proceeds with, if I could have just a minute, we're going to try to fix at least these 2 screens so that all of the text shows, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop. Well, darn. I'm a lawyer, so I can just keep talking. And you use that ad nauseum. Opening statements, as the judge told you, are an opportunity to tell you what we think the evidence is going to show. But more than that, it's a roadmap. It's an overview. Since evidence comes in bits and pieces, some people describe trials as puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, if you will, and how evidence may fit into there. This is so fucking ridiculous that I can't even explain it to you. You need to know how each little piece of evidence in this 2-week trial is going to fit into the big picture. Is going to fit into whether or not Brendan Dassey is guilty of the 3 offenses for which he's been charged. Notice again how the first half of that sentence, it's smooth. The delivery is nice and smooth. And then the second he starts talking about how Brendan Dassey is guilty, he starts tripping over himself because even Kratz is aware that he's full of shit. One moment. Yes, I went over to the dark side. I went to a vape shop here in town called Taos Express Vape, and they hooked me up with this, and I gotta say, guys, I'm really enjoying it. He then starts talking about the Stephen Avery case. the Stephen Avery case, but you didn't hear the evidence in that case. And some of that evidence, as I mentioned, may or may not be contested. But because of the importance of this case, it's still necessary to tell you the whole story. It's necessary to explain all of the physical evidence, as well as the evidence that may be directed towards Brendan Dassey. And some of that evidence, again, will be physical evidence, and some is going to be statements. See, again, he brings up Brendan Dassey and then he trips over himself. This is a subconscious thing, guys. You need to pay attention. It's really interesting. The judge told you that Mr. Dassey's been charged with 3 separate offenses: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and first-degree sexual assault. He told you the elements, that is, what it is the state has to prove. And then he proceeds to start explaining the laws behind those things. They're pretty fucking self-explanatory, folks, and the fact is that most juries, now I say most juries because I'm not entirely aware of how jury deliberation works up in Wisconsin. I know how it works in New Mexico, I know how it works in Florida, and I know how it works up in Colorado. I've served on juries in all 3 states. But typically when you're at the end of the trial, you're given the jury instructions by the judge, and then you go into the deliberation room and you've got, paperwork that tells you the meaning of each charge and what elements need to be proven in your mind to render a guilty verdict. That's where that comes in. So why the fuck Kratz is taking up time in the opening statement to explain this shit is beyond me. The judge has told you that a defendant can aid and abet the commission of a crime if he assists somebody who commits it, or importantly, and what you might hear in this case, as the evidence may show in this case quite a bit, is that the individual in this case, Brendan Dassey, stood ready and willing to assist, and that the actor in this case, Stephen Avery, was an individual who knew of Brendan's willingness to aid and abet. Did any of that make sense to anybody else? Because it didn't make sense to me, and I'm a legalese translator. What the fuck was he saying? See, this is a tactic that Kratz uses quite often. He pads his statements, he pads his questions, he pads his words, because he knows he's full of shit, but he's hoping to confuse the shit out of you so that you think that he's sounding smart. He's not. He then says, you're going to hear evidence in this case that Miss Halbach was single. That's the first thing he fucking says about Teresa Halbach. Why does that matter? Oh, that's right, because you guys didn't actually investigate shit. That's why. And you don't want the jury to fucking know that. This case begins at about 8:12 a.m. on Halloween day of 2005 when the plan was set into motion to take this young woman's life. Your ass hurts. The plan was set into motion to rape and to kill and to mutilate this 25-year-old innocent young woman. The investigation of this case begins when we learn that Miss Halbach was reported missing on Thursday, the 3rd of November, 2005. Except there's no evidence of that, because when Stephen Avery made the phone call to Auto Trader to make the appointment, he had done business with Auto Trader a minimum of 15 times in the past year. He already knew ahead of time that it was dodgy as to whether or not Teresa Halbach was going to be able to go that day or the next appointment date. He didn't know. But Kratz wants you to believe that he had October 31st planned as the day of Teresa Halbach's murder, and that's total horseshit. You will learn that the investigation, or at least the missing persons investigation, determined that the last place that Miss Halbach was on the 31st was a place called the Avery Salvage Yard. Well, we've already determined that that's bullshit because the cell phone pings put her away from the Avery Salvage Yard. The cell phone pings show that she went to the Avery Salvage Yard and then she left and then she went to George Zipper's. So you're full of shit, Kratz. And the other determination early on in this case was that a man by the name of Stephen Avery made an appointment at 8:12 that morning to have Miss Halbach come to that residence or to come to that property, which was the Avery Salvage property. Yeah, he did, and he put it under his sister's name. See, folks, this opening statement, and I'm going to leave the link to this down below in the description so you can check it out for yourself. This opening statement is textbook of complete and utter bullshit. Even the prosecution knows that it's full of shit, but they don't want the jury to know that. And Kratz, the amazing orator that he is padding his words because God forbid he ever do anything on the up and up. So what the fuck is going on here? See, they didn't have to prove as much in Brendan Dassey's trial as they did in Stephen Avery's trial, but he's still trying Stephen Avery in Brendan Dassey's trial, despite the fact that Stephen Avery had already been found guilty. Why? Well, probably because he knew that if Brendan Dassey was found innocent of all charges, that would throw a shadow over Stephen Avery's conviction. You see what I'm getting at here, folks? All right, I've got some more shit that I'm going to cover for you tonight. We're going to talk about the Ketty murders a little bit more, and we're going to talk about another case that will be one of the first cases handled by Clue TV, which I will also leave the GoFundMe campaign link down below in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to me on YouTube. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Mama Phoenix 6, and we'll see y'all next video.